Hello and welcome to Ticket Manager's All Access interview series, engaging leaders from across the sports marketing spectrum to identify and explore critical issues in the business of sports, entertainment, sponsorship, activation, ticketing, hospitality, and even more. I'm your host, Jim Andrews, and joining me on this episode is Matt O'Brien, a man of many titles, including Senior Vice President of Rock Entertainment Group and SVP of Global Partnerships for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Matt, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
So you've been in the sports partnership and the revenue generating space in sports for a while now. So I kind of like to begin just getting your view of what do you think is the state of the industry today? And, in terms of maybe what are some of the biggest challenges to selling, securing, working with brand partners? Why don't we start with that?
Yeah, happy to start at the top, the very big, broad picture. I think broadly, so long as sporting events are driving the live TV destination watching eyeballs, that the partnerships ecosystem that lives within there is healthy, is really healthy, arguably, as you're seeing at the macro, the rights across many of the global sports teams are typically showing headlines in all of our fun business trades. And so that's great news. That's fantastic news. I think underneath there is, I would say they're challenges, but they're probably just evolution of they're not new challenges, evolution of the same challenge as technology and insights evolve. I think one, just the measurement and ROI on any partnership as brands have gotten more scientific. Operations like ours need to be more scientific on how we not just value impressions, but also engagements, return on energy, not just assets as a like how much, what's the lift on this? How much do we need to do? How much do you need to do to make sure that we can extract the value that we need? There's an ongoing challenge of newness of assets and is what's new and fresh to sell. We went through a period of teams integrating branding into, at least domestically, onto kits and uniforms, and we're seeing virtual take off. But really, that is something that, while we think is great, we have to explain that newness, and then we got to figure out what's next. There's a couple ones that I watch is the continuing skinning of the swim lanes, as many brands are in so many different categories, and trying to figure out how partners like ours either grow a relationship to include many of those lanes or try to find how people can find value in their own distinct lane. But even though that lane isn't everything that company does anymore. And the last one, I think, is continued sense of alignment and brand alignment for folks. And that's just not here. That's globally. As these Premier League come to the US and people are trying to figure out great value, but how am I aligned with that audience? And with the emergence of women's sports, which is fantastic to watch, is I have daughters who play sports and I have futures in some of these things now. And I think how those all fit together adds another level of complexity to brands is what are my lanes? How do I want to invest my money? And the good news is, there's still eyeballs, there's still attention, and we're seeing great partnerships driven through sporting organizations that are driving value. So overall, I think it's pretty good. Just ongoing challenges, which there'll always be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think some of those, they're healthy challenges, right? I mean,
Healthy.
You don't necessarily, I think, maybe some people when they first either start out in the business probably think the ideal brand partner is one that doesn't really want to know how they're doing. It's oh, we can get, they're not measuring, they're not out evaluating. We can get away with this, right? It's not maybe for a season or a year, but not after that. So you want your brand partners to actually have those kind of metrics and be transparent about it and let you know, so hey, this is how we're performing, and either we need to make some tweaks if we're not hitting some of those goals, or we're doing well and we can maybe get more creative and see if we can do even better. But
yeah, media value is easy to measure, but right. A partnership's not about media value. Yeah. You need the the B2B value. How do you grow my brand? How do you grow brand love? How are you helping me grow my business? like, what are the other connections that we can make through this partnership? And so as you expand out, you need to find other ways to measure those things, not just you measure, but measure in a platform that your partners have some understanding of what you're delivering them as well. And so an agreement on how you're going to measure it is potentially the most important agreement in the process of what you're going to do together.
And then you mentioned, kind of the new inventory, the new assets, what's coming, and certainly the NBA and the teams in the league have been leaders in a lot of things in terms of new fan experiences, new types of events, content platforms, all that kind of stuff, and that often becomes leading sponsorship and activation platforms for the partners. Is there anything that you're looking at that kind of is exciting to you as something that the Cavs can offer? And we hear all kinds of things about certainly mixed reality and AR and VR, and that's been around for a while and kind of up and down in terms of whether it's really ready to make an impact. But maybe it's that, or are there other things again that you're looking at that you're like, yeah, this is really going to be exciting pretty soon here?
It's funny. We've heard about AR, VR, mixed reality for years.
Right.
I feel like that was here a decade ago, and there are versions of it that are here, but you may not realize that it is essentially mixed reality or something like that. I feel like it blends in really well. Here in Cleveland, we partner with Canon. We on a system that is now Rocket Vision that we use more on content. It's not essentially integrated completely in our broadcast, but we could see a world where we have versions of the broadcast that completely, or I'd say more prevalently, feature Rocket Vision with like hundreds of cameras around. And it allows you to watch a game through the perspective of one of the players in the court, which is pretty fascinating. Like, I want to see the game that Donovan Mitchell sees. It also allows this fun gamification feature where I joked with Mike Conley, who's led this project for years, I think when it started, that guy's like a brick house. You run into him. And someday I would love to see, be able to see that guy as a brick house. And we're at that point, actually. Where you could make the players on the court feel like dinosaurs. You can turn them into things. You could turn the basketball into fire, all in live action, which is fascinating technology. I kind of look at what the NFL does with, I think, Nickelodeon, the slime game. Yeah. There's a version of that for an audience that is super interesting. Yeah. And it's fun to watch that evolve. I'm not sure if it's like mass market. It's certainly niche market stuff, but they've done some trials in hockey and which make that more interesting. Like following the puck in hockey, just adding a tail to it, a tail in golf. That slight broadcast adjustment has changed lots of stuff. How many people said, I don't even know where the ball went in golf.
Right.
And so that's the technology, this sort of mixed reality technology that you're already seeing. You just don't know that's super high tech. Beyond that, I think the things that I'm really curious about is watching the LED court that the NBA put out at this past All-Star game in Indiana. It's fascinating to me. My mind probably moves so fast on those because some people say, okay, we don't have to put applications on the court and paint the court because it's LED. And I think, yeah, you could also move the 3-point line at any given time, right? There's many things you could do if you've got a live court, and I have to protect myself from myself. And obviously, Mr. Commissioner Silvers ultimately is the one who's got to think about that stuff. But I just think the possibilities of that are super fun long term. And then you're starting to see a little bit more of this regular virtual in the branding game, like virtual ads in the court and some virtual branding.
Right.
Look, there's probably a world not so far away that some of the brands that you think you see on pole pads or courtside are just virtual. Like, we don't need to put a decent system in there, probably just a virtual. So it'd be fun to watch. The hyper customization part of it that we're seeing outside of sports working its way into sports, that you can watch the game that you want to, is probably the most driving force. But look, there's a lot of people in the world to customize it for.
Mhm.
And lots of people just don't want to spend that much energy trying to make it custom, like they're used to watching it, how they're used to watching it.
Right.
But that may be us folks of a different generation. My daughter at 14 probably wants to see a basketball game a little differently.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and as you say, the technology is going to allow that to happen. You can watch the same game completely differently, and again, maybe that opens up more opportunities for different brands to be involved. And it was interesting when you talked about kind of the swim lanes and a lot of companies that are really expanding their business, and that can create, as you said, challenges for folks on the sales side. How in general are you finding those conversations around exclusivity? Are brands really, it seems to me some brands still like that's paramount, right? I have to have exclusivity. And in other cases, it's like, no, I'm happy to split the category as long as, again, those lanes have been established and I'm not bumping up against my competitors and they're not ambushing me.
They're, as you might expect, they're all different for all different brands. Like in a broad media world, there's very few instances of real exclusivity. And
Right.
so it's not like many brands aren't comfortable with it. In sports, there are opportunities to create a super authentic partnership with an organization that you just don't want somebody in your category sort of rubbing up against it. And I absolutely get that. It's just we're trying to work from both sides to make sure that we as a sporting entity, an organization, provide them the lane that is something that they feel like they can own. And sometimes that is a category or a vertical or a thematic, not just necessarily just a category, an industry, because the industries are rolling over. It's like fintech. Okay, fintech is about as broad as you might as well say general finance, right? They're so broad, but within there's so many other categories that are bleeding into each other. And I think it just makes you think about what is it beyond your category? What's the concept that you own? And what are the things that you can build into a partnership that deliver that only that brand can do, as opposed to something that's vague that other people can kind of own with them. It requires a little more thought to do that, as we've seen many categories start to sort of blend together, rub up against each other a little bit more.
One of the other things I wanted to talk to you about, you leading an organization with all the rev generation going on there, and in terms of again, how things are changing, what it looks like nowadays for developing and leading those sales rev gen teams. How is that kind of evolving with whether it's recruiting, managing, motivating, to be top contributors on that side of things?
Working in sports, like many industries, is not seeing the set of lifers that many industries others. Like we have that in common. There's no assumption anymore that one person's going to work there for 25 years. We're blessed to have many of those folks, but I think you're seeing essentially young entrepreneurs come up, and I call them as they come out of university or college or decide that they're not going to do that. That's not their path. They're thinking as an entrepreneur from an earlier age. We can thank YouTube and TikTok and some of these things for at least having some people think about business in a different way. I think those are super helpful, but it's also something that is that individuals used to sort of working on their own schedule and not with a larger organization. Mm. And so, I get nervous at times of making sure we have the right amount of collaboration with groups, which, yes, at times requires you to be all in the same building. I just think that people react to that a little differently. I don't think every generation thinks the other generation never worked as hard as they did. Like that's universal. Yeah. Like my dad thought I never worked as hard as he did. He went to a factory at Caterpillar and worked on a line. And he would look at what I do today and call that like that's like a part-time job. Like that's not a job. And so I don't think there's anything about how the different generations that one works harder than the other. I think they work differently, potentially working more efficiently in some places with technology that we just don't see that. And so there's something that needs to adapt on both sides of the business. And that's the toughest part, right? If you all saw it the same way, work would be easy, but there's different perspectives. With flexibility comes some other measurement of accountability. And so talking about those types of things, and then like the motivations of people have changed of what they really want to do. And I think Shelley was talking in the office the other day about finding what is everybody's sort of love language. Like you have a love language with your spouse potentially that is different. Like it's not just going out to dinner or something like that. There's a love language. Connection is everybody, but it's different. Like what is that really inspires that individual, because it's not a broad brush. Potentially they're getting more different and diverse every day. And so the generalizations of one sort of carrot for some sort of mass effort is going by the wayside. A lot of more individual carrots.
And has geography come into play for you in terms of hiring?
Mm-hmm.
I know I've been talking to other folks who, and again, a generation ago, you would not have thought that somebody could be a partnership salesperson for the Cleveland Cavaliers without being in Cleveland. And that's, again, COVID obviously taught us a lot about working remotely but other changes too. Now it's like, boy, you might find somebody who is, the perfect fit for the job, somebody you really want, but they say, I'm on the West Coast and I don't want to relocate. Is that have you faced that, or what do you think about those situations?
That's not here, but that's coming.
Okay.
It's like getting that collaboration of being live, and in the events business, I feel that's a little tougher. Like if we're truly embracing a live event here, you're going to need to be at that live event. But that's evolving. Like we've seen the Premier League set up offices here in the States to engage and for the same live purpose, right? If you want to have live meetings and do real business, that means face to face, which means I need to have somebody over here. So you're giving up sort of the live engagement at the event in order to have a meeting with somebody face to face. And I think that's coming. I think we've seen a few teams in the NBA where one of them contemplate having folks cultivate business internationally. And that's like an ongoing conversation is where, how, what is that done? How much do they need to know? Is that somebody that's Cleveland over there? It's interesting, two-way street, right? Do you need somebody that really knows Cleveland that can represent that over in Brazil or London or Madrid? Or do you need somebody authentic to Madrid or Brazil or London who is authentic to their community, who can understand their culture and make the connection back to Cleveland? It kind of goes both ways. And so those are the interesting conversations that we have. But, my work at the 100 Thieves is that we have that organization as a global esports organization. We have people in a few different places, including commercial folks. And so I've got some insights into and the advantages and disadvantages of that. And it's my first experience with having remote commercial execs. And there's some learning experiences. If you came up one way, I'm just used to showing up at the office. It's just different. But that's just me. I just have to understand that it's going to change. And there's the one thing I certainly believe is a value in-person conversation. And that may mean having somebody else stationed somewhere else.
I'm glad you mentioned 100 Thieves, because I did want to talk to you about that. I mentioned up at the top, you wear a lot of hats, and one of those is Chief Revenue Officer for 100 Thieves, which is part of the Rock family of companies there. The esports space, to me, it's really fascinating. It's had some ups and downs recently, but certainly 100 Thieves has had a lot of success, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about what's been happening there in terms of some of the brand partnerships.
Yeah. Look, for those who don't know, while we assume everybody knows gaming and esports, like the 100 Thieves are a premier lifestyle and gaming organization based in LA. I often, for parallels in brand conversations, use the idea of the 100 Thieves create the same emotion like often the Cowboys or Notre Dame or the Green Bay Packers creates. There's really not much of I don't like them or I love or I don't know how I feel about them. You really love 100 Thieves or to see us win at everything, or you tune in to watch us lose.
Right.
Either way, we love it. You're tuning in to watch the 100 Thieves.
Yeah.
And
it's a
so
great brand to have.
It's a great brand. Matt Haig, Nate Schott, our founder, is a super competitive 8-time world champion Call of Duty player who is competitive. He is the heartbeat and the energy of that of what built that organization. And his basic premise for the organization is a little bit of diversification. We compete in 3 titles in esports: Valorant, the LCS, League of Legends, and Call of Duty, which is close to his heart. And so the organization has 3 of those, but also a content creator business where we cultivate content with a set of creators that sort of live in-house, not literally, but figuratively in-house creators. We also have a really thriving apparel business, which is it was fashion of the apparel for a gaming generation. And then the last piece of the business is High Ground, which is a keyboard business, like a products business. And that basic premise is like keyboards are the new sneakers. Now, people are buying keyboards to display fashion keyboards, and we've done some Pokemon collaborations. And so what has been fantastic about the Thieves business is that diversification has allowed the organization to find value in many different lanes, not just through the ups and downs of esports. And I would say those are more public ups and downs. Esports viewership has continued to grow like 9% in 2023. I joke that it's not pickleball. The new shiny toy is pickleball. We're all leaning into pickleball, but we have the same issues we had with esports. It's about audience and how do you relate. Esports has been something that you played yourself, and how does that relate to you watching other professionals? But people are engaged in gaming and esports on a regular night.
Oh, gosh.
And so how those relate to our partners is with still growth in a fan base, we're trying to integrate our partnerships across the entire business. Brand partners like Lexus and Heineken, AT&T have value coming back in multiple verticals, not just esports, and that allows us some flexibility, and they could look really different. We did an amazing Nate Schott hole-in-one challenge with AT&T where we put Matt, who's an avid golfer, on a tee box and filmed it. So we're going to shoot for a day until he gets a hole-in-one. Now, as a gaming and esports organization, like, what are you doing? But look, a lot of our followers and fans and community are not like esports who sit in the basement. Like, they play golf and they're into fashion. And so we drew a huge audience online. He nailed a hole-in-one on his, I think it was his 83rd shot. It was amazing. You forget, like, the guy's a really good golfer.
Must be.
But it's the crossover, right? Is the cultures somewhere between gaming and the NBA is this awesome community of connection where, like, our NBA guys on our roster are probably playing against other esports creators and the like. And so our org is trying to drive value in not just the esports, but the content around them. And we've been really fortunate. Heineken, AT&T, Adidas, we've added a Crocs partnership as well, and just been really fortunate to continue to drive value in different ways. And it's growing. It's fun. It's a really interesting thing to figure out. Our hardest challenge at times is explaining what the business is and where to extract value, because a lot of folks who are great marketers, love the audience, don't know about the audience or don't know how to get to them.
Right. Well, and you mentioned, the brands that you're working with, and those are obviously, for lack of a better term, kind of sophisticated marketers who get it, who probably can easily grasp some of those possibilities. Like, yes, we can do the hole-in-one challenge with Matt, whereas somebody else might be confused completely by that. But what are you talking about? This is an esports play, but as you say, it's not just an esports play. So that's both a blessing and a curse, right? If you get it, if the brand gets it, then it's like, yeah, there's so many opportunities here. And, we're a culture business, we're a lifestyle business, as well as a sports gaming platform. So use it all. But, other brands might just be a little bit thinking about it in a certain box and then get a little confused along the way. I've seen that
Oh
happen.
man, if you listen to our podcasts, no, we have a handful of podcast shows, and you would think we're getting in there to talk about the latest Call of Duty match or some, like we're talking about the same things that other places talk. We're talking about how the NBA team, how the Lakers played the other night, or how the PGA tournament, PGA tourney finished. Like it's all over the board because our community has diverse tastes. They happen to have a common core that they all love gaming, but that's not the only thing they love.
Right.
They love all these other things. And so we try to have a center of gaming and live in the world around it.
Well, obviously with all of the different responsibilities you have, it's a fascinating role, I'm sure. And again, like everything that's interesting, sometimes it's you wish it maybe not so interesting, and other times it's just glad not to be bored and having to do the same thing over and over again. So I just wish you the best of luck with all of the different endeavors there, and hopefully we'll get to touch base and see how things are developing with you, the Cavs, with 100 Thieves, and all the other things that you've got going on there in Cleveland and elsewhere. But Matt, I just really want to say thank you and really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you. Like I do think we need to check back in at some of what's the future of some of these NBA LED courts, and who knows, check back in. I'd love to do this again in a few years and see how much of this stuff actually came to fruition, or if we're still going to be talking about AR and VR the same way in 3 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And so appreciate you having, and have a great week.
All right. You too. Take care. And on behalf of Ticket Manager, I want to thank all of you for watching and listening. And please join us again for the next episode in the All Access interview series.